A24. A24 has built up a reputation as consistently producing these indie gems, these more artistically driven, smaller movies that kind of value the director's vision more than just trying to market it to the widest audience possible. Regardless, I feel like people hold A24 in a much higher esteem than Blumhouse, Platinum Dunes.
If you can hear us, we just wanted a chance to say goodbye.
Warner Brothers.
Find them! Save!
Warner Brothers.
That's the ticket.
What comes next? What if it's cold or lonely? What if we're not together? What if there's nothing at all? So then the girl...
Can you shut the fuck up?
Lately, they've been on a good tear. Moonlight, Hereditary, 8th Grade, It Follows, The Witch, Transform. Recently, I've delved into their filmography, their history of every movie they've produced to see if they are truly flawless. No. For every Spring Breakers, you get Tusk. For every Moonlight, you get Equals. I fucking love that director's first movie, and then... But we have a new A24 movie, Hot Summer Nights. I watched this last night. It was nowhere near me when it got released. I don't even know. I don't remember when it did. I live kind of relatively close to these smaller theaters that play these kind of smaller, under-the-radar movies, and even those weren't playing this movie. Directed by... starts with an E. Elijah Bynum. I don't think he's done anything else. This is a mess of a movie. It is not the A24 gem that we all really were hoping it was. And the trailer was even a little misleading in some ways. This movie is less about a young drug kingpin rising through the ranks and gaining notoriety and getting in too deep. Oh no! In too deep. It's more about a very boring, oft-told romance between the nerdy, awkward, bumbling kid and the class... I forget the superlative. The class... the prettiest in class. The hottest in class. It's Micah Monroe. Fuck.
Sometimes kind of just pinch yourself and go, life is good.
Yeah, you definitely have to sometimes take a step back, because there's often where you can just kind of get caught up in it all because it's my life and that's how it is. But then it's very important to kind of step back and be like, wow, okay, this is awesome.
Yeah.
One of the best compliments I can give this movie is that it's making me think about it. It hasn't been too long since I've seen it, but it's making me think about it a lot more than just other passable movies that are kind of the worst when they just go by and you kind of forget what happened like an hour after. Someone was trying to tell me what happened during the Meg, how many deaths there were in the Meg, and I don't even remember. I don't even know if there was a Meg in that movie. It was kind of went by. No, there's a Meg.
My God. It's a megalodon.
He's kidding, right?
Dwight, you ignorant slut!
But this movie is such an interesting case of a director who I feel like threw so much energy and just like puked this style so early on. The first third of the movie is super hyper stylized. It's filled with montage heavy quick cuts and camera whips and pans. He's a graduate of the Edgar Wright School of Filmmaking. I really actually dug the visual flair that he brought to the table. I feel like he has a really nice eye, and with a better, more tight script, maybe written by someone else, then it just felt like a glossy, candy-coated framework, and I feel like there was not enough glue holding it all together. It doesn't ever seem like it subverts expectations. It really felt like we didn't need to be told this coming-of-age story again. It felt super directionless, and when it was faced with a fork in the road, it felt like they just went straight through the middle and like ran into a tree. The story itself didn't even feel well thought out from the beginning. It kind of felt like he through all this style and these editing and camera tricks and techniques and the technical aspects of filmmaking that is very visually appeasing and it's nice to look at, but it was all feeling like it was masking a story, or a story that he didn't even have at all. In a way, it reminded me of how people criticize Mission Impossible Fallout for being the story being built around the action. Whoops. How people said the action scenes were already set in place in Fallout, and then the story was built around it. It felt like the style was there, but they molded it around this really collapsible story that was super boring and things we've seen before. And I'm not talking about major plot points, like tropes in movies are fine, you know, the young kid trying to make a name for himself, trying to win over a girl, it's fine, but the way it's delivered, little moments that are sprinkled in here and there that just really make it cringe up or roll your eyes or cry or masturbate. I guess the best word to describe the movie in its entirety is borrowed. It feels like it loans so much from other movies that have done this stuff better. Like John Hughes films kind of tackle those, you know, issues of growing up and dealing with relationships, blossoming love, and realizing yourself in a somewhat cheesy and corny way, obviously, now that we look at it. In this movie, it didn't really do much with the cliches it presented. I really felt like it was going to take it in a satirical critique that kind of genre, those tropes themselves, but I never felt like it went in that direction confidently. One of the first lines in the movie suggested that it was going to do such a thing when Timothée Chalamet literally says, like, "Oh, you're sending me away to my aunts." What a cliche. And it's okay, it's heavy-handed, but like I'm thinking, okay, so they're gonna it's gonna be some sort of commentary on that whole thing, but there's a lot that gets forgotten about in this script, like a major plot point towards the beginning. And I guess this is a spoiler warning, also a nude warning. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of. The beginning, the reason he's going to his aunt's in the Cape Cod, I have a lot to say about that later, but the reason he's going to the Cape is because he's mourning the death of his father, who was someone who he was very, very, very close with and well respected through a very kind of necessary, not really, montage of his dad just like befriending people. This movie, the narration too. God, sorry, I'm like losing track. But he's going to this. He's going to kind of get away from his home life, from the area that he knew. I guess so much of that home life kind of feels lingering with his dad's spirit or his presence, and getting away was kind of a necessary move for him. And then he goes to the Cape with his aunt, and the movie never mentions. I don't think it mentions his dad again. Like, he's sad at a restaurant for like one shot. And then he starts like dealing drugs. Like, he just fucking I'm convinced that this director writer Elijah Bynum completely forgot about this like subplot he kind of ushered in towards the beginning as a way for him to get away and to, you know, usher him into the next. I've said usher way too many times. I work at a movie theater. I usher. So in a well thought out, well written movie, you'd think that narration would kind of bring this story to life or fill in gaps that wouldn't easily be told seamlessly through the narrative or dialogue or scenes, characters talking to one another. But the narration in this movie is a nightmare. It is a tonal fucking nightmare. There is no plausible reason why a child needs to narrate this whole thing. I hate to critique his vocal delivery, but it's not pleasing to listen to.
Oh, she has one sword. She's not gonna beat me.
Shush up.
Let this stupid console shit load. No one kills my sister on my watch.
Shush up.
Like, Morgan Freeman's pleasing to listen to. This kid has fucking nothing to do with the plot until like one of the last shots of the movie. There's an awkward mix between like childlike dialogue that he's delivering, and it's like, oh, it's cute, he's talking that way because he's a kid. But then he just starts like cussing left and right. Of course I'm not against fucking. Of course I'm not against fucking cussing, but it's like, pick one. What the fuck? He has some of the most wince-inducing dialogue. The content of the narration is awful. There's no justifiable reason why this kid needs to tell us things that, I mean, we could easily find out through scenes or, you know, the narrative. There's shreds of self-awareness throughout, but not nearly enough for me to think that it's some grand satire on the genre. And speaking of its genre, what is this genre? This movie, it's so lost in what it wants to be, what it doesn't want to be, what it tries to be, what it is, what it isn't.
Looking for a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new.
There's such a cluster of eras combined in this movie with the soundtrack, some of the most bizarre music choices that range from 50s, 60s, 70s. The movie has a large title that says it takes place in 1991. I swear to God I heard a 2000 song somewhere in there. Hey, 24! The majority of the movie felt like era deaf and blind, for that matter. These characters, I for a long stretch of the movie, I completely forgot about where we are in time, where we are in location, until I saw like Timothée Chalamet's going to get food at the movie theater, and these girls are dressed in like super 80s clothing. They talk to each other like they're in Greece.
Hey,
Hey, yourself.
I was hoping you'd show up.
Guess who got lucky?
I can't get her out of my mind.
It's not 1991, I can guarantee you that. I feel like I'm really derailing this whole thing and I kind of lost my focus, but I just want to mention one more thing because it doesn't really fit in anywhere else. Why, the location, where this movie takes place, Cape Cod, Massachusetts. I've grown up in Massachusetts my whole life. I haven't lived anywhere else. It is such a lazy and pointless representation of Cape Cod. There's nothing about this movie that screams any distinguishable aspect of Cape Cod from this other beach in this other state, or I can't even think. There's nothing about this movie that makes me think Massachusetts. Like, oh, that's Cape Cod. Of course they're, you know, docking their boats, and of course they're down at the beach applying like a buttload of sunscreen. It's an upscale, pot-smoking, very hot summer environment, and that's not exactly the Cape Cod I know. Like, there was very little to no research put into what makes the Cape, and I'm not saying this as a resident of Hyannis or the Cape at all. I've been there many times, but I'm not really, when you have to really force in that hard Boston accent just because it's Massachusetts, like, I'm borderline convinced the majority of people that live in the Cape do not affect that hard eye.
And it's not just Cummings Park, it's Car Park, it's Plaisted Park, it's throughout the community.
The locals in the Cape do not affect that hard Boston accent. And again, it feels so borrowed. It's like this guy, this director's seen Goodfellas.
Hide this.
Can you take me home?
Hey.
Hey, yourself.
He's
My life would be a lot easier.
They want more.
Breathe. The nights turn long and sleepless.
Why at Cape Cod? Why do you have to set it in this location? There's nothing even like environmentally that eye-catching about this Cape Cod beach from any other beach from what you're presenting. The city is interesting. There's definitely long stretches of, you know, boardwalk and jetties that are around there. I can't really tell the difference between this and something else. It didn't make the location part of the plot. And I'm pretty sure they shot the movie in Atlanta, so it doesn't even matter anyway. Anyway, I was talking about the narration, and the narration is, if it's not the worst aspect of this movie, it's one of the worst. And it doesn't really help that a lot of it is needlessly and thoroughly detailing things that don't really need to be over-explained. Is a montage of Micah Monroe's character, her character in this movie. She is like objectifyingly sexualized to the extreme in this movie. I'm aware that it's a child speaking to us, and from the mind of a child, this very attractive young blonde girl is the object of affection for these people. But the kind of gruesome detail that they go into in terms of like just her body, like this kid just takes a piece of gum from like under a mailbox that she was chewing and puts it in his mouth, and like it's such an admirable feat. Yeah, it was supposed to be funny, but coupled with shots of a guy hanging himself because because of her, I think she rejected him or something. Michael Monroe is very nice to look at. You don't need people explaining that to us to understand that. But what about her character? There's nothing. And if this is some sort of comment on the trope of the hot blonde who is the object of everyone's desire, it was awfully delivered. It didn't really play off like a silly pit stop, like, oh, we're just gonna go over here and, like, you know, introduce this character. It was aggressively detailed and dark about her body parts, and some shit just doesn't make sense the way they're describing her. Like, if they said if you ride your bike past her house at the right time, you can see her. Are you saying if you ride past her house and she happens to be in the room, you can see her? Like, or is it the angle? Like, what? I think she's a talented actress. I thought she was fantastic in It Follows, but I feel like I'm forced to identify her as the movie sees her, through the lens through which they see her. The sex object of every child's fantasy, and it just kind of sucks. It's like a toxic reduction of this person by bludgeoning masculinity. The ending, this kid narrates, like, she disappears. She just, like, takes a bus and leaves. It's like fucking Spectacular Now shit. This kid narrator mourns her disappearance by grieving on behalf of his, like, fellow kid brethren who will never experience her sexuality or, like, her fragrance. This, like, will never be sensationalized by how fucking hot she is.
Can I have a word? How would I describe my character in a word? She was an interesting character to play because I think initially, I don't know. I think.
Use a sentence, please.
Okay. Well, I think, you know, kind of all
Teenager, sexy, heart.
was that she was really trying to figure out who she was, and I think, I don't know. I think. Like, what's happening, you guys?
The characters are very well thought out. They're all very complex, so, like, it's hard to explain briefly, but
I haven't even mentioned the main character yet because there's not much to him. Timothée Chalamet plays Danny.
What a cliche.
A very forgettable, not really likable or interesting character. Super one-dimensional. It's just like, it becomes a problem when you associate his character with characters you've seen in previous countless movies before. Oh, he's that kind of guy. What else? He befriends this pot dealer who, I mean, the accent, man, like, oh, God.
Car park, it's placed in park.
He's this very handsome object of everyone's desire. I mean, especially, you say you think even some of the men, even me. There's a really epic shot of him getting out of his car, and it's like this sweep in, or I think it's actually like a zoom in on his face. It gets very close, and I don't know, it was cool. Timothée Chalamet gets all like goo-goo-eyed, and he's like, oh my god, I need to be friends with him because the script says so. In a weird way, this relationship between Timothée Chalamet and this other guy he was the guy in Rings.
So be it. You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring.
What a cliche.
Sorry. Some trauma from flashbacks to Rings. In a weird way, the montage sequences and the drug related scenes are reminiscent of The Wolf of Wall Street. There's a lot of Scorsese influence this guy took from. There's just so many like dolly shots, especially during the first third. They're kind of like tracking into someone's face and quick, cuts and fourth wall breaking with the locals, talking about legendary figures, especially this Rings guy. I don't know, I forget his name. It was something really weird. It was like a Jake Blueberry or something. Strawberry. There's a healthy amount of freeze frames and like still images, like a slideshow, just like thrown in here and there. There's one, admittedly, toward the beginning that made me laugh when his mom's telling him that he has to live with his aunt, and they just show like a still image of her on a motorcycle. It's like a slick picture, and Timothy over top's just like, fuck. I'm not referring to the graphic detail with which they showed DiCaprio and his entourage doing drugs in that movie. I'm saying like the way they show passage of time and how they show someone getting high. Like, I don't really smoke like all that much, but if a hit is so like, good? Do you actually collapse and fall to the ground and just, like, lie paralyzed? Hit me up if you know.
What a cliche.
That, like, if so, then I'll like, if so, then I'll have what you're having. I mentioned before how they don't really acknowledge this kid's dead father for the rest of the movie, and this kind of would be an interesting approach to having this kind of older guy take him under his wing and kind of be like a father figure to him if they kind of hearken to that, but it's not. It's the most stale, lifeless, kind of somewhat tense relationship between the two. It's like, it's every story ever written. This kid has a sister, the really hot sister, Micah Monroe. He can't date her because that's his sister, and oh, it's the holy grail of blonde. You can't have what's in reach because it's so out of reach, but it's right there in front of you. There's a scene where these people meet in the arcade, and it's like the first time that it's revealed Timothy Chalamet's been hanging out with his sister. It's the first time that the sister finds out Timothy knows her brother, and it's supposed to be this really, like, climactic showdown, and then nothing happens. It just fizzles out, and you're left like, I should have seen Slenderman, and I did see Slenderman twice. It's bad, but it's enjoyable. This movie relentlessly just borrows from other formulas that have been well documented, done better, and if you're going to use a genre cliched, trope-filled formula, can you present it in a unique and interesting way? Can you do something different with it? There are plenty of movies that have done this very, very, very well. There's the movie I was talking about earlier from that guy who did Equals. It was called Like Crazy. That story is admittedly not the most subversive, romantic drama, kind of long-distance shit, but he presents it in such a unique and fresh, heartfelt, and very loving way.
Why didn't you just tell me, Jake?
I told you there is nothing happening.
You're obviously involved in something with this person.
I am not involved with anything.
You're not involved in anything with this person.
Absolutely
There's
not.
nothing between
Absolutely
you whatsoever.
not.
That's a lie.
This movie, to me, operated best when the style was the substance, but even then, when they tried to get, like, gritty and make you, like, feel and kind of tug at your heartstrings, like when they're running through the fields and they're about to have sex in a car and there's rain coming down, it's like a perfect world of, like, tropes, like, coming in all at once. I don't feel like it has enough self-awareness or, like, cheesiness to kind of compensate for its style. If style is inhabiting the substance, which I am a proponent of, I think style can be substance, but why this movie insists so dearly that I care about these people, especially during the second half. The second half just devolves into this really boring, romantic,
cliche,
like, kind of relationship, kind of drama. It's just this, like, there's scenes of them doing, like, dances in the rain, and it's just like, or maybe not the rain, what was it? It was at night, it was outside a bar. And I mentioned how I felt this director really tried to compensate the lack of substance with all these quick, you know, camera whips and technical wizardry and...
I can't get her out of my mind. My life would be...
It's like a gallon of milk that went sour and the director is selling it at retail price, but the expiration date is covered by a scratch and sniff sticker. I'm trying to think of things to talk about as the movie just drones on, but it's just the same. It's kind of peppered with, like, it's supposed to be interesting shit with, like, drug people. There's that guy, the Emery Cohen, the Brooklyn kid. He comes in and just does some stuff, but at that point, like, you lost the audience. Like, it's over. It's so empty and hollow. There's absolutely no foundation holding all of this together, and it was like a Goodfellas wet dream in, like, an 80s Tarantino dialogue kind of banter shit show. The performances are fine. Just fine. They're not blow your mind, and they're all pretty wasted considering the talent. It's disappointing when so much effort goes into one aspect of filmmaking, and it's admittedly the part of film that I really treasure the most. Presentation, cinematography, editing, technicals. I really dug some of the visual kind of detours that this guy took. There's like a sequence where locals are kind of talking to the camera about this guy, and I didn't really care, but I can see the director was putting effort, and I appreciate the... Do I appreciate the effort? I guess I appreciate him just wanting to be like the greats. It's taking so much influence and inspiration from classics before it. Boogie Nights, Goodfellas. I saw a review that mentioned Rebel Without a Cause, and I kind of agree with that too. There's a shot where Timothy first meets this kid, this pot dealer, and they have to go into a house to get weed. I don't know. They're just there so Timothy can take a hit from a bong and just fucking pass out. They're navigating through the house in a single take, and it's oh, the oneer, oh, and it's just the classic film student oneer where you gotta be you gotta be impressed at, they're going over here and now they're looking over here and they're going through doorways, and oh my god, the choreography, the coordination. I swear to God, I have to watch it again because it was just so funny to me the first time. I swear they just went in a circle. They didn't actually go through the house and into different rooms. They just went around into the kitchen and then back out through the deck and into this little room. And I'm oh my god. Just, you can't even rip off Goodfellas correctly. Some of the stuff that was sort of borrowed from their style, I kind of liked. The scene before that when they're in the convenience store and Rings guy throws the dime.
Hide this.
He's hide this. And then Timothy Chalamet is panicking, throws it in the cash register. And Timothy can't open the cash register, obviously, so he's just panicked. There's some there's some funny close-ups and of their eyes, and they're kind of darting back and forth, and it's all schlocky and cheesy.
Yeah, I'm just not having...
Why don't you try eHarmony? We can find the... We've helped over 1 million...
The ending is such a forced, say farewell to these beloved characters we saw grow and change over the course of these... Well, it felt like 2 hours. I don't know how long it was. It's a shade over an hour and 45 minutes. Wow. It's such an unsatisfying ending. I mean, at that point, it wasn't really able to be saved. This movie I would recommend to people who really just appreciate the craft of how a movie is made. If they get inspired by kind of the way they make things a little visually interesting towards, the first, third, I'll say first half of the movie. It feels like this director came straight out of film school, on fire from his professors and classes, and he's I'm gonna make the most bombastic, chaotic, frenetic piece of mess I've ever made.
Can't hold on to everything.
I think some things you can.
Then I hope you're good at being hurt.
But what is it about horror movies that draws you to them?
I mean, it really was by chance that these films lined up and happened to come out at the same time and be at the festival together. I don't know how, by chance.
Even better than I was the last time, baby.
And then he just puked all his ideas and creativity onto a project, and you get a hot summer mess. The title too, I don't know why, there's nothing really of note about A Hot Summer Night here. It could be called The Kid and the Girl, or Weed. Anyway, if you're looking for a better movie with Timothy Chalamet, Call Me by Your Name is a good choice. Lady Bird he's also good in that. It's funny because in Call Me by Your Name, Timothy Chalamet's character is very emotional, expressive, precocious, and in Lady Bird, it's just deadpan humor. And in this movie, it's the most awkward middle between the two. And it's hard because he tried. I can tell he really tried to add some depth to his character by just his little inflections, like pausing between dialogue phrases and letting the other one speak, and just the looks and glances he gives and confusion that he kind of mumbles up. It's hard when you're a talented actor and you're doing your best with the material you're given, but sometimes that material is like not to be saved. It's not to be touched. I would say it's a kind of valiant effort by the director, but he also wrote the script, so yeah, I don't know. It's a 5 out of 10. I don't know if I'll ever see it again, but it's worth talking about. So it's got that going for it. If you like A24, the merch link in the bio.